Roll up, roll up, roll up. Welcome to the fight of the year. It is the King of the Baggers. This is the one you've all been waiting for. In the orange and black corner, we have weighing in at 838 pounds, the fat bastard. We have the OG, the Shark Nose. The original fixed fairing touring bike made here in the good old US of A. We have the Road Glide, not just any Road Glide, but the CVO ST. That's a lot of letters on the end there. Will it weigh up to the title? In the maroon and white corner, weighing in at 831 pounds with all the fluids on board, ready to go. We have the new kid on the block as of 2020, or despite being from the oldest motorcycle company of the two. It is not out ahead of the pack like the Scout. It is not at the top of the pack like the Chief. It is coming to take the title as the Challenger, and it's called the Challenger, the Indian Challenger. So let's get ready to rumble! G'day YouTube, welcome to Drop Bear Moto. Apologies for getting a little bit carried away there. It's the weekend of the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight, and whilst that one might have been a huge flop, I can guarantee you that this Battle of the Heavyweights won't be a huge flop. But it has been fought before on many a YouTube channel, many of a times. So why should you give me your time today and watch this video? This is an owner's review. We covered a little bit of why we purchased this bike in a previous video, but I thought we'd just talk you through the differences between the two as owners. So maybe a unique perspective. Not sure how many people are owning currently both bikes, riding both bikes. The Indian, we've had a little bit longer, obviously, a couple of years, and we've done just under 30,000 on that now. But the Road Glide's jumped quickly in the family in the last month or so, and we've close to 1,000 miles on that one already. So come along for the next little while, and we'll talk you through our differences of the two, what we like, what we dislike between them, and work out who is the King of the Baggers. Ding, ding! Well, this is an interesting story. I was a Harley guy riding a Road King, wanted a fixed fairing bagger, and I elected to buy the Indian Challenger a couple of years back. My wife is an Indian motorcycles fan, had only owned motorcycles from that brand, wanted a fixed fairing bike in 2024, and bought the CVO ST. Why?
Switched to my vlogging helmet, so might be a bit better sound. It's a little bit windy out here today. So we put a lot of miles on these bikes. They are touring bikes, but we ride assertively, right? We like to ride motorcycles. When I bought the Challenger, I was coming off a Harley Road King. That was my second Harley. I knew I wanted to go a fixed fairing bike, and the stability I find you get on the freeway when you're doing long miles, long days, you know, is bar none to me. And that was where Mrs. DBM, if you saw the video on her buying this, she was riding a Chieftain before an Indian Chieftain, and realized the same. Like I would just cruise on ahead in the Challenger. She was sort of a little bit dubious in high winds, you know, round trucks. A little bit more conservative, because by far in 2022 when I bought this bike, compared to the previous Road Glide, to me this was a standout, and I'll talk you why that was, and it was an easy decision to make. So I did buy a used one. It was a couple of years old at the time. Roll on to now, we've had the 2024 Road Glide come out, and it's an amazing package, really improved package. Funny story on this one was I was actually looking maybe at trading the Challenger on a CVO ST, wanted to go down and test ride them. As I mentioned, Mrs. DBM, you know, finding some of the limitations of her Chieftain, and she actually came back and said, you know what, I love that bike, I want to buy it. Whereas I, you know, spoiler alert, decided that I want to stick with the Challenger for now. So we'll talk you a little bit through those decisions and why. So to understand what we're comparing today, the Indian Challenger is my 2020 Indian Challenger base. And this is where I say the video could be a little bit of a Jake Paul, Mike Tyson rematch, because we have here the top of Harley's range, brand new model year 2024 CVO ST Road Glide. But I think they're comparable, and we'll talk you through why you might want to consider buying these two bikes. Through the video though, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Challenger base versus the Road Glide base, and we'll talk about the Challenger Elite, which would be the closest comparable bike to the CVO ST, and in Indian's world, the Elite is equivalent of CVO, I guess. So it's about 26.5 grand recommended retail price, comparable to the base Road Glide, which is about 26 grand recommended retail price. This is a 43 grand CVO ST, top of the line. You say it's more comparable to the Challenger Elite. The Challenger Elite is about a $38,500 bike, so still a price difference. The Elite really is, it's the same engine, same drivetrain, same suspension. You know, all the key stuff that kind of matters in terms of how the bike handles, what the bike does, is exactly the same from the base Challenger to the Elite. It does have a friggin' fantastic paint job, you know, heated grips, heated cooled seat, you know, tons of extras in there that make it stand apart. But the core handling, dynamics, performance of the bike are exactly the same. Whereas the interesting thing Harley have done, they've always kind of put a little bit more performance into their bikes in the CVO line. And I mean, this thing's a standout, right? This is the king of the road, the king of the baggers, the cream of the crop. You know, with the heated up engine, suspension, brakes, everything's different from standard. So that's something we'll have a good look at. The reason I went for the Challenger is performance-wise. So let's kind of start there. And when I say performance, that's not just the motor. So the Indian has a 108 cubic inch Power Plus motor. It's liquid cooled. That's the first difference. So again, same in the Elite. That engine is putting out 122 horsepower and 128 foot-pounds of torque from the factory. The base model Road Glide, let's talk about first of all, with 117 cubic inch. The heads are cooled now, but predominantly air-cooled motor, the Milwaukee 8 motor. The standard Road Glide's putting out about 105 horsepower, 130 foot-pounds of torque. So very comparable in the torque that these bikes produce. The difference, I'd say, that 122 horsepower versus 105, there's a substantial lift in horsepower. First of all, now this bike has the 121 cubic inch high output M8 motor. It's putting out 127 horsepower, so it does jump the Challenger, and it's putting out a whopping 145 foot-pounds of torque. So a ton more torque, so definitely more power in this one. The reason I mentioned that, look, the first thing, that engine blew me away. Back in 2022 when I rode these two bikes, or the predecessor of this, but it was pre the liquid cooled. I can't remember the horsepower from back then, but I mean the horsepower and the torque, like, it was amazing. This bike was so responsive, it was amazing. It was a completely different machine, and I much preferred the motor. Second thing, when I think about performance, was handling. Both of these bikes have inverted forks, and that makes a huge difference. I think this was the other piece that swayed us with Mrs. DBM. So standard on the Challenger, but these are the adjustable Showa inverted forks on the Road Glide CVO ST. It has standard suspension on the front on the normal Road Glide. So the first thing there, I still think the Challenger's ahead on the base models, and I would definitely go the Challenger to get that already in the bike, because you'd have to pay to obviously get that on a standard Road Glide. When we come around the back, the Challenger has a monoshock, which is a far better setup. It's a Fox standard monoshock in the bike and in the Elite, that's hydraulically adjustable. The regular Road Glide, it's just again the standard 2-shock setup that Harley's had for quite some time. This one though, again, it comes with the piggyback reservoir. It's a Showa suspension, and again fully adjustable, so game-changing suspension. Next thing I'll talk about that you got standard on the Challenger was the Brembo brake setup that comes dual disc front, single disc rear, and they're radially mounted Brembos. So again, standards sort of on the base Road Glide now, you still got a standard sort of braking setup. And so, much better brakes from the factory on the Challenger still today. And then when we move to the Road Glide CVO ST, again, similar setup, radial mounted brakes, 2 on the front, single on the back. This time round though we get the wave rotors as well, so better cooling arguably in there. So again, comparable setup here, but base Road Glide to Challenger. Challenger's still ahead. And then the last thing I sort of talk about performance wise is just general handling. So steel frame still on the Harleys, as you can see, little bits of it poking through. The Challenger feels completely different on the road, and that's because it's got an aluminium subframe, and the engine's actually part of that chassis. So very different setup and a totally different handling experience. Both bikes have got a really similar lead angle from the factory, so about 31 inch on the Challenger, a little bit more with 32 inch on the Road Glide. I did used to grind this one a bit, and that's why I lifted it. Interesting, I haven't gotten the Road Glide down yet, but probably haven't gone as aggressively on it either, so be interested to see when that one sort of bottoms out. But you know, good lean angle on them, a little bit better on the Harley. I mentioned weight at the start of the video. Look, it's comparable. Interestingly, CVO ST is just down a little bit on weight than the standard Road Glide. That'll be all this forged carbon, I guess, and doing away with some other things, lighter componentry. But the Challenger, you know, again, is comparable. So a little bit more weight here, but really, you know, small numbers that you won't feel in the real world. So all in all, this was why, to be honest, I went the Challenger back in 22 versus the predecessor Road Glide. I definitely got the power, the brake setup, the suspension, the handling was so much better in the Challenger, and that to me is what set this bike apart from the Road Glide at the time. Definitely a huge step up to what we're seeing now on the Road Glide CVO ST, but is it alone worth the 16.5 grand price difference between a base Challenger and a Road Glide CVO ST? So let's talk a little bit about ergonomics, setup on the bikes, some of the touchy-feely sort of stuff. I'll group, you know, riding, I guess, into this section. So the interesting thing with these two bikes is they are very different. The Challenger, look, this one has been lifted 2 inches, so I know we got a fisheye lens here, we got a bunch of stuff we got lined up not well to compare. But the Challenger is definitely a taller bike. The Road Glide, you kind of sit in the bike, and you know, you are a lot lower on the bike, and the bike's height is a lot lower than the Challenger. The Challenger's a big bike. If I come around here, you can probably see from the gas tank, you know, the Challenger's got this huge gas tank that kind of sits up the front here. The old Road Glides really had a high center of gravity, and I felt the Challenger was better back then, but it is a big bike. The new Road Glides have totally changed that, and that's in the base model and in the Road Glide CVO ST. You can see here it just feels a lot smaller, it's a lot lower. Hopefully it comes out in the video, but much lower center of gravity. Interestingly, the seat height on the two is really comparable, but it's just then what's in front of you. And this one, so the big difference between Mrs. DBM and I is she is 5'3", I'm 6'3". She jumped on the Challenger a couple of times, and look, you know, it just felt like a big bike. This one definitely is taller, obviously, but I think, you know, if you go and sit on them, if you are closer to her height, you'll find that this is a taller bike, a bigger bike, higher center of gravity. This bike has a much lower center of gravity, is much lower, and that was the final selling point for her, was easier sort of low speed handling, easier to pick the bike up, move it around, and it just doesn't feel like a big bike. It feels like a smaller bike, and I think that's where the Road Glide and Harley have really nailed it, compared to the Challenger. Me being 6'4", the other thing I do like about this bike, I've got the seat set back a bit, I got my higher bars on. It really suits a bigger frame, and I, you know, this thing is the most comfortable bike, you know, or bagger, I'm going to say, that I've ridden in all those miles. Absolutely love it. These are taller. These are the mid-rise bars that I've put on here. Both bikes, sorry, actually that's an interesting point. This bike comes with very low bars. If you're taller, you are going to need to lift the bars up. The regular Road Glide actually comes with perfect bars for a taller person, and really like the bars that it comes with. On the CVO ST, they put lower bars on, and I know a lot of people are complaining about it, right? If you're going to be on it all the time, really aggressive, you want that sort of setup. You don't want the high bars, but if you are cruising, if you are out covering miles, you're going to want high bars, and they go on this week, so we'll update you on that video. Subscribe to the channel, you see what we chose to put on this bike, and we'll do an update on that one when it's all said and done. Creature comforts. The Indian has this 7-inch screen, which is really cool. The Harley blows that away with the Skyline OS screen now. Very good screen. This comes with like a 100-watt stereo, I think, in the base version. The Elite 400 watts. In the CVO ST, it's about 500 watts. I assume it's similar to about 100 watts in the in the base Road Glide. I couldn't find the stats on that one, but you know, at the higher end you're getting a similar sort of sound system out of both, so that's kind of comparable there. The good thing about the Challenger is that it does have the automatic windshield. So this has been a great feature. I know anyone with a Harley's absolutely sick of people hearing about it, you know, from the Indian riders, but the ability to lift that windscreen up and sort of have it adjustable on the fly is very good. I actually had a really large windscreen on this one, but riding around in summer with a full face helmet, it was just too high for me, so I went back to the standard windshield. I know that the smaller fixed windshield, on the Road Glide, you know, you can buy a bigger one. Clockworks obviously make great shields for both, and get a taller one there if you want, because this is quite low for a taller rider. The other thing I'll say is that the Indian has remote bags, unlock bags, which is nice with your key. You can lock them and unlock them. The Harley still has the traditional lever that you pull up to get into those bags. The other thing the 2024 Road Glide's brought in is ride modes. The standard bike comes with I think it's like rain, road and sport, and then you can set custom ride modes, so a lot more versatility there if that's your thing. This bike though has just rain, standard and sport in the ride modes, so less flexibility. CVO ST has track mode as well, which was actually tuned in conjunction with Kyle Wyman. I put that setting in there, so I assume he bolts into the seat at the same time, and suddenly that thing goes like Kyle Wyman when you click that mode on. So looking forward to really getting a hold of that mode. But more digital wondery and technology in the new CVST. I'd also say that the Harley, I think there's a lot more kind of ABS systems now, rider assist systems. Challenger's certainly got them at all. Found them very unobtrusive so far. Again, if that's your thing, some people want a pure riding experience. In that case, I found that the throttle control on the Challenger and the Indians generally not as responsive as Harley. This bike's had a Lloyd's tune. I always go a tune on my Indians because I just feel that suddenly you get more responsive feel like you do on the Harleys. So if you're test riding the two, you might find that, but easily fixable with a tune in the Challenger. Last thing I want to talk about is looks. You know, that could be pretty decisive, right? That's very subjective, which one looks better. It was kind of funny when the Challenger came out, everyone went, oh, they've copied the Road Glide, it's the same as the Road Glide. Then when the new Road Glide came out, everyone went, oh, they've copied the Challenger, it's the same as the Challenger. I mean, these things are going to look similar, right? Because they're fixed fairing bikes, and there's only so much you can do with the looks in there. This is super modern now. You know, I think this is a great thing about competition. I think everything I've just mentioned is these guys are going to be pushing each other's further, particularly with the King of the Baggers series. But I think just, you know, out on the streets here, they're going to be pushing each other all the way to get a better experience, and that's just great for us as a consumer. Look, I don't know. It's an interesting one, and you know, there's pros and cons of both. It probably does look a little bit sportier. It probably stands up a little bit prouder. Obviously, the lower fairings do not come factory. They've been added to this bike. I think the big thing I'd say though is I prefer the Harley because it's less plasticky, I would say, than the Challenger. Ultimately, that's the one thing I don't like about the looks. You've got that huge radiator on the front there. You know, obviously a smaller radiator just for the heads on the Harley is different. But the other thing that really sort of always stands out to me is every time I got side on to this Road Glide, I can see right through the middle of the bike there, and to me that looks like a motorcycle. That should be the case, you know, even with a bagger. When I look at the Challenger on the side, you know, I've got this big plasticky covers and panels, and it looks like looking under the hood of a modern car. You know, you can't see anything. It's all plastic back there. So we have literally come to the end of the road. As you can see here, we're starting to lose the daylight as well out here. Final thoughts. Look, for me, being taller, I would go a standard Challenger again. I would keep this bike. I did not see the extra value in going to the CVO ST, particularly with what I've done with the ride height, seating position, exhaust, tune, and you can see a bunch of other kind of extras on that bike. Wasn't worth the extra money to go to this one. If I was to do it again, I would go the Challenger for the bigger frame of the bike. I just feel more comfortable on that bike. It surrounds me better. and I think it's got all the good stuff already on the bike, just a few mods, and you know, you're where you want to be. Versus going, you know, a standard road glide, I would still want to do definitely the suspension. I'd probably want to do a bit more to the motor, and I would want to touch the brakes as well, probably for me. So I would stick Challenger. If you are short of frame though, like Mrs. DBM, you really want to be looking at this new Road Glide. It makes baggers a lot more accessible in my mind. You know, it is a great package. You are going to need to do something with the suspension, maybe the brakes. So the motor, look, the reason we went the CVO ST for her is ultimately this is a killer package. You know, you would never be able to put everything this bike's got in, and you can check out my other video on the bike as to why we went that. You know, is it worth 16.5 grand or whatever it is above the standard Road Glide? You couldn't do it for that. Do you need everything on this bike? Hell no. But if you've got the cash and you're lucky enough to be in a position to be able to buy it, then that's awesome. You know, go for it. So for the time being, we're rolling up to Daytona next year at the King of the Baggers. I'll be wearing my Indian gear. Mrs. DBM will be wearing a Harley gear, and we'll be duking out in the stands with all of you Harley and Indian fans, checking out. But I just say that I think what these companies are doing to fight each other on the track and off is phenomenal, and you can't go wrong with either of these bikes. They're just amazing bikes, and we're having a lot of fun on them. So if you enjoyed this video, you thought it was helpful, give us a like. Next video is coming up. We're going to try and drag race these two. That's why we're out in the back of nowhere here looking for a bit of road that's open. It'll be a bit of fun, not serious, but I just want to see how they actually perform, you know, running through the gears. So give us a subscribe. You'll check out that video, the bars as I mentioned, and there's always stuff coming on the Challenger. Ride safe out there. Hope it's been helpful. Catch you soon.